All right. We are 4 minutes past the hour. So I guess I will attempt to call this meeting to order. It looks to me like we have a quorum, but as a sort of first step, thought it would make sense to sort of do a check-in / roll call. And I think the elegant way to do that is do it from sort of my POV on the Brady Bunch here. And you just sort of, we'll just do a quick check-in and introductions. So I guess Joy, are you there and can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm also here. Stephen, you sound check, you with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Mr. Ray. I can see your forehead. Sunshine.
I'm here, multitasking, I'm here.
Great, thank you.
Present.
Okay. Lyle here as well. This is sort of just to make sure we've got something for the minutes here too, who's here and where.
On the ones and twos.
Gotcha. Chris Meyer. All right. Kathleen.
Yep, here.
Corey, you are filling in for Jen.
Sir.
Right. Anthony.
Present.
We've got Chris Murray.
I'm here, but just to let you know, I have to leave at 1:25.
Gotcha. Well, we're trying to single shot this meeting with one topic, and I am optimistic we're not going to go the whole two.
Good.
Ridge.
I'm here.
Great. John, you were there as well. Hi, Nancy. Hello.
Hi, Phil.
Hello, City of Charlottesville logo, nominally Brian Wheeler. Then we have Aaron and Alex and Michael, are you with us? Can you hear us?
I am here.
Great. Okay. So by count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We have 12 voting members of the HAC present, plus non-voting, at least one. That brings us to a quorum. If there's no objection, I'm going to declare a quorum. Cool. So we do have minutes that were distributed. If everyone wants to take a quick look at those, and we'll get those out of the way, and then we'll sort of launch ourselves in. If I do.
Move to approve the minutes.
Right.
I'll second.
Any, all right, if there are any minor edits, just shoot them to John at your earliest convenience, please. Let's see. Oh, and Lisa has joined us too. Welcome, Lisa.
Hello.
Okay, so all in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Hi.
No objections? Moving on. Right. This meeting was called to address one main topic and to attack it from a couple of different angles, which was sort of an interest in coordinating the response, the COVID response amongst the various stakeholders, and to sort of review where we are and what our next steps are. So to begin with, at our last meeting, we took a look at the programs that we were using CAF funds to implement, that John was carrying forward to council, which essentially went through council with minor edits at most. So I think John, do you have anything you want to summarize about that? Or give us an update on the basic timeline on some of these programs and see where we are at the moment?
Yes, so the programs passed the council. We kept the homeowner mortgage assistance program at 10 years, but we did create a forgivable program. Give me 1 second, let me pull it up. So we made, so the council talked about, there was a push from the mayor to make some of the loans for the homeowners forgivable. So I did provide them with two proposals. They accepted proposal number one, which made all loans given to families that are 0 to 30% AMI after the 10-year loan ends. The 100% of the loan will be forgiven. Households from 31 to 50% AMI after the 60-month loan term, 75% of the loan is forgiven. For all households between 51 to 60%, 50% of the loan is forgiven, and all families from 61 to 80% AMI, 25% of the loan will be forgiven.
All right, a quick
So
question on that, just while I'm thinking about it.
mhm.
When is that determination made if we're at a 10-year time frame?
It's made at the end. It's
Gotcha.
made at the end of the 10 years.
Gotcha. All right. So we're operating under the assumption that that's still the best way to measure these things 10 years from now, but fine.
So what we're currently in the process of implementing the program. So we're going through the prioritizations, getting applications together, and getting some of the forms, getting a plan to push it out to the public. And the goal is to get it up and running by July 1.
By July 1. Okay. And you have got, in the plan now is to try to do these all in-house? You're muted. Hello.
Sorry, I kicked myself out for some reason. But I'm back. So the goal is to get it up and running, all the programs up and running by July 1.
Right. And you're taking them, the idea is to try to do all of this in-house?
That is the plan. We are hitting a small snag with the homeowner mortgage assistance program, so that we might have to partner with an outside agency to run that one. But that's still the goal.
Gotcha. So, is there a pipeline that's coming in already on these on proposed, do you have a sense of the quote demand, for lack of a better term, for each of these at this point?
I have a very small one based upon who has contacted me for assistance already. Like I've talked with Dan, and Dan told me the number of individual homeowners that have requested assistance or forbearance. So I believe pretty much if we just use his individuals, we could occupy the slots for the homeowner mortgage assistance portion. So I do have some on that end. I've talked with Anthony about the demand for the homeless assistance. I've spoken with Holly with the reentry, because she's working a lot with them with the Home to Hope program. So I've spoken with her. So I do know a little bit of the demand for most of the programs. And
But
so
we're not going to know what we know until we're sort of rolling here.
Yes.
Can I
Gotcha.
add two things to that, just to build on, and Anthony and I are probably going to talk about the same thing, but let me just say one thing first, which is just so everyone knows, Piedmont Housing Alliance applied for CDBG CV funds to develop a similar program for Albemarle County. We have not received any approvals yet or anything, but we're asking, if I remember correctly, for about $300,000 for supporting homeowners in Albemarle County as well, just so that everyone knows. And then secondarily, and Anthony can talk more about this, the state is allocating $50 million statewide through DHCD for both rental and mortgage assistance. And Anthony, take it away.
Sure. So locally, we're expected to have about $2.2 million for the TJPDC region for rent and mortgage relief. It's going to be coming through the Planning District Commission. And the plan is to partner with local service agencies to get the money out, especially in the more rural communities, with agencies who already have those relationships there. But just know that that's coming. The idea is to actually get the money at the TJPDC on the 29th. to be able to help get payments out into the community. It's something that the state is pushing out extremely fast, and we're doing our best to fly the plane, build it while we're flying it. But just know that there is a significant amount of money coming our way. It's probably not enough still, but it is definitely there, coming. And it is the TJPDC who's going to be the administrator, even though they're going to be partnering with direct service providers on actually getting that money out to residents who need it. So obviously, I think there's going to be definitely opportunity and a necessity to coordinate your program, John, with that rent mortgage relief program as well, just to make sure that it's getting to the people who really need it and also not duplicating efforts there. But then the other thing I was just going to bring up was just to clarify for the homeless portion, John, that you and I talked about, and I thought that was also in your budget. Is that something that also that you expect to be run out of the city, or do you expect to partner with us in administering that program? How do you see that?
I see that as being a partnership because
Okay.
you are already doing the work. So I don't think we should be trying to recreate something on the city side and get it up and running in a week. So I see it as a partnership.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
I think
That's what I was expecting to. I know you mentioned that you were thinking of doing it in-house, but I guess that was the other parts of the program. So cool. Thank you.
I think that's one of the key sort of goals of this meeting is to talk about how we can organize to coordinate on a bunch of levels, and this just being one of them, and not necessarily the specifics of each program. Great, but sort of next steps to take as we start implementing and moving forward, that we are indeed, that if we're not functioning as a de facto clearinghouse, at least that we can sort of plan on how to sort of move and bring these things together and what role the hack can play doing that. So I guess the question is, we have in our packet this breakout based on time frame that is in part pulled in the city's programs into it. I am not beholden to any particular way of approaching this information, but it seems that it's as good a framework as any, and to look at it from the point of view of what our next coordinating steps are and what work we have to do to be ready to coordinate, if that makes sense.
So can I, on that note, and
Okay.
building off of the conversation we were just having, I've been having a text back and forth here with Jeanette Kawachi about the state funds, Anthony. So this is, and just wanting some clarification. I know we've been in conversation, TJPDC has been in conversation about helping administer as well. Do you have any clarity on the timeline for those funds being received from the state? And then when potentially we can start distributing support? Yeah.
The message that I got from DHCD at the state was that they want $500,000 to be in the bank account at TJPDC on the 29th
of June.
So on Monday.
Okay.
And then they want that to be distributed, and then basically they're going to do like a, they're going to get it out in phases essentially to make sure that they're able to allocate. If some communities across the state can't use the money as efficiently as others, or there's more need in different parts of the state, they want to be able to respond to that. So that's why they're kind of parsing it out in these different allotments. But $500,000, the plan is for that to be in the account on Monday.
So with that in mind, do you feel like there's enough infrastructure in place to start distributing those funds on Tuesday, or is there still work to be done to prepare for that?
I think there's still definitely work to be done to prepare for that. I mean, I can't speak for I think Christine is one of the leaders on the program. So I don't want to speak for them. I don't know, maybe they are, but I would assume that there still needs to be some work done to be able to get the money out on the streets on Tuesday. But yeah, I don't know. I wish they could speak for themselves on this, but yeah.
Thanks.
Okay.
So I do have one question coming from
Sure.
Methden. So is there an organization that's willing to start doing some of these programs that we're talking about in-house with the state money, so then we can hold off on using the CAF money on some of these initiatives until the state money has ran out? Or I know, because that's been a push from some members from the HAC of holding off on some of the city money. So is that something that some local organizations are willing to do?
I'm sure. I mean, I think so. Again, what I know about it is that the TJPDC has agreed to be the kind of administrator of the program, but they are planning on relying on like direct service providers to get the money out to residents who need the rent and mortgage relief. And I don't know what specific conversations they've had with local organizations. Sunshine, I'm not sure if you guys have talked in detail about administering or being a part of that, but so I can't speak to who is actually going to be doing it on the streets, but TJPDC is the point person at this point for that program. And I think whether or not you want to hold city money, use the state money first and then hold city money later, that's an approach. I guess the one thing that we were thinking about and wanting to make sure that was clear was just that, some localities in the TJPDC region don't have local funds like the one that one that's being proposed. And we want to take that in consideration as well. And obviously they might not have as much need, but that's just something we want to be aware of and want to make sure that, we're not saturating certain markets or certain areas that have a lot available and really leaving, because I could see a lot of this money going pretty quick in just the county and city, honestly, even though there's need across the whole region. So we just really want to make sure that we're coordinating it regionally is an interest, knowing that there are some local programs, if that makes sense.
So to follow up on that a little bit, Piedmont Housing has had a preliminary conversation with TJPDC. Now this is end of last week, to discuss the idea of us facilitating and administering or supporting the administration of the mortgage assistance funds. Because we already have in place a housing and financial counseling team. We already administered down payment assistance funds. There's kind of a natural fit there. That has not been finalized, and honestly, I haven't had a conversation with Christine or Chip in the last few days to take that any further. But I would certainly we would be in a position to help support that for sure. I did say to them though, that we are not in a position to help administer the rental assistance funds. All the rental assistance funds that we have either gotten from CACF or have gotten for private donations have been to support our own residents in our own properties. And we don't have the capacity to administer that for the general population. And so I'm not quite sure where that sits, but we do have the capacity to do so for the mortgage assistance.
So, I mean, they're not at the table at the moment, but it seems to me that the conversation between John and there needs to be a conversation had on their deployment with John and the city, so that we are not in fact reinventing the wheel or
and
stepping on each other.
I mean, I will say that, so Kaki Dimick from Human Services, who was very closely involved in the program to get a lot of the COVID relief funds. That was a partnership between United Way, CACF, and the city out. There's a lot of lessons learned from that experience, and so Gretchen and Kaki have been a part of this planning process to how best to get this program out, knowing that it's a lot of the similar expectations in terms of the need and also the response. So just know that those voices are involved with trying to make it work as best as possible. And so I do think though that John, if you'd be up for it, I can try to get a call scheduled with you and Chip and Christine at TJPDC, just to make sure that that you guys are all coordinated.
FYI, I am emailing them right now to see if they can potentially join this call currently. So I'm seeing if I can get that to happen.
Great. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right.
The other-
So,
Just to highlight the purpose of this call, which is this need for coordination, is, we serve over 900 job seekers, many of whom lost their jobs because of COVID-19, who are coming to us for rental assistance. If we could feed them into this system in a way that's systematic, we would love to be able to do that. So again, very much highlighting the importance of exactly why you've convened this meeting, is to just make sure that all of these disparate pieces are tied together so that people who need the help can get it. So thank you for convening.
yes, sir. And I think it would seem to me that there is some value in trying to organize how to coordinate some with this meeting rather than to implement the actual coordination, sort of at one step remove. And I'm trying to come up with a framework with which to do that, based on the materials that we've got and the information we have at hand. And I'm open to suggestions on how to organize that. One thing we do have is this collaborative spreadsheet tool on immediate, short-term, medium-term, long-term actions. And I'm not sort of married to this, but I am sort of interested in the idea of trying to organize based on what we've done and what our next steps are and who needs to coordinate with whom, and then sort of launching that as we go and sort of going through them, if that makes sense. And here's what we're doing, here's where we are, who needs to coordinate with whom, next step.
Sounds good. We have a framework in place as well with the Housing Authority that we've just got an outline for in order for us to do rental assistance with all the individuals we serve with public housing and the voucher programs. So we've already got that set up and are ready to go. We were just trying to decide on the best way to plug in.
Right. So, I mean, do we divide this up by, goal? Like, okay, everything, do we try to coordinate all rental assistance through some central, for example? It looks to me like we've got a couple of different mortgage programs. Do we try to, do we do them by sort of program topic? Do we do them by immediacy? I mean, how do we organize what we're organizing here?
Do you want to start by going over the spreadsheet? Because I noticed in the packet that just due to the nature of turning it into a PDF, it got kind of chopped up. Would it be helpful if I shared my screen to show the spreadsheet in its whole nature?
That'd be great. I was going to attempt that, but why don't you attempt that?
Okay, so give me a second here.
I might be able to manage it. Oh, there you go. You beat me to it.
So just as a quick reminder, this document started as a conception from a document that I'm showing here right now, which is a framework that the National Alliance for Ending Homelessness put forth, and Christine Jacobs just joined us, so we can circle back to that here momentarily.
Right.
So just as a quick reminder, this is what it kind of built on, and they developed their own kind of public health and economic recovery, and it probably is too small for you to see, so let me zoom in. Framework looking at immediate, short, medium, and long-term programs, all with the focus around, generally speaking, homelessness. So we decided as a number of providers came together to build on that and look at how we begin to prioritize and think through our community's response, again, in the same sort of idea, immediate, short-term, medium-term, and long-term actions. But we added, is it too small for people to read? Should I zoom in a little bit? Yeah, okay.
Yes, please.
I will do my best. You won't be able to see the entirety, but hopefully you'll get the sense of it here. Is that better? Okay. So this is organized where with a time frame at the top, when we're talking about, and realistically, this was developed as a concept a month or two ago, back when we were in the middle of still adapting day to day to the COVID crisis. So to some extent, I would say theoretically we should be outside of the immediate actions, and ideally should be in the short term at this point. I wouldn't say that's wholly where we are, but that's the ideal in some ways. So anyway, here's the time frame. Here's the basic push. So as an example, under immediate actions, public health response, emergency protective measures to flatten the curve. In short-term actions, public health and economic recovery response, prevent re-entry into homeless situations, help others remain housed, invest in ongoing and future initiatives. Those are examples. And then there are action priorities, funding priorities, and then activities based on categories. So you have activities to support unhoused people, to support low-income renters, to support low-income homeowners and home buyers, and then other key activities that kind of are necessary to support the ecosystem as a whole. And then that was replicated down here below here for medium and long-term actions. This was a community effort to build where it is right now. So just to be 100% clear, I didn't build all of this. This was just something that I kind of kickstarted by putting this spreadsheet together, and then people collectively filled in. Are there any, before we jump into any details, or does that framework make sense, or any questions about that framework as a whole? Okay.
Is there any interplay, Sunshine, between this and the intervention analysis tool that we started a while back that seems to have some overlapping, some overlap with this, but isn't explicitly referenced?
So you're right that a lot of the individual line items are directly correlative to the IAT. You'll note that in particular, down here under long-term actions, under funding priorities, it says align the IAT with CIP with the goals of city and county housing strategy so that everyone in Charlottesville and the Charlottesville region has access to safe, decent, affordable housing by 2035. So there is a combination of those two, but there has not been an explicit effort that I'm aware of to make sure that there's full alignment of everything, but that there's a nod to it. And I will say that I also don't think this is necessarily a complete document. There was a surge of activity when we first put it out there. And then we have all gotten consumed by our various needs at our different agencies and efforts. So it has not much change has happened over the last 2 to 3 weeks, I would say, realistically.
Is there anything on here we can just say, okay, that's done, we don't have to even look at it anymore?
So there are a couple of things we've made a little bit of that I was trying to go through on some check marks. And I think some of it is at the point of we're standing that up at this moment, and some of it is we've just started. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you, Sunshine, on that. But I think, for example, under the immediate impact, we are in the middle of doing everything just about on the low income renters section. If you want to look at that. Right, we have the moratorium on evictions, which is about to end. And I'm not sure what the date of that is, but it's essential for our purposes. It's essentially now.
Yep.
Monday.
I'm sorry.
I think Monday it is over.
That's right.
Right. So now, we do have a public housing support there has been some action on that in already. We are in the middle of trying to stand up a landlord rental assistance program. That's one of John's short-term emergency rent relief prevention program. We're trying to stand that up. So, I mean, I think on some of this, and then in the low income, we're trying to stand up the homeowner mortgage assistance program. So I think we're all at the point of how do we coordinate those efforts best? And what do we need to do to organize to do that?
So just to build on that a little bit, your question's important, Lyle, because I do think there are some items on here which we can effectively cross off. Some of them are certainly underway in one form or another. And there are many, though, that no one's really sort of holding and taking ownership of. I do think there is value in collectively going through and seeing if there are key line items in here that we feel like are that no one is doing or has ownership of, that we need to lift up either now or in the short term. So I don't know. I know this is a fairly long list, and it would be easy to get to have this meeting, get overwhelmed by just going line by line. But there may be value in doing some of that, particularly in these two categories, these immediate and short-term actions.
I think that's a good path forward. I agree.
Okay. All right, I'm just gonna go through line by line, and I guess it would be helpful. I'm not going to be in a position to take notes on this spreadsheet about comments that come out or organizations or entities that take ownership of these things. I can mark them complete, I think, or I can do something along those lines. But I would be helpful not just have a note taker like the minutes, but to have somebody specifically tracking this as we go through it to make sure that we're keeping track of comments that arise.
I can do that.
Thank you.
Lyle.
All right, I'm going to start with unhoused people. First activity, increase outreach, and let me zoom in so you can see it even a little better since we're going to be talking in more detail here. Increase outreach and create additional hygiene resources in unsheltered locations.
So yeah, this is, I mean, you can put TJAC there for the owner. Are we just doing owners at this point, or are we?
And whether it's been done.
I mean, halfway.
So it's in process.
It's in process, yeah.
Ensure social distancing in current congregate facilities.
Done.
Rent a hotel and provide services in a temporary location.
Done.
Begin search for motel, hotel purchase to later convert to permanent supportive housing, PSH.
The search has begun, so yeah.
Okay. Implement an emergency homeless rental assistance program.
So I think John's program is related to that. So I guess you can say that's done if that was approved.
Okay.
We also already have, we have rental programs underway currently. They're just not additional to address COVID. So the additional one that John's proposing, yeah, that would be the first one. And so that would be done. Create
quarantine isolation units for unhoused people who test positive for COVID-19 or who are awaiting test results.
That is done at the current hotel that we have. People have their own rooms they can quarantine in if they need to. So.
Okay. Moving on to low-income renters under immediate actions. Encourage jurisdiction-wide moratoria on evictions.
That was done.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. It's
right?
done.
That was done, but it's over now.
That's right. It needs to resurface. I think you're right, Joy. Increase outreach to vulnerable renters through existing nonprofit channels. I think that's underway.
Yeah, we're certainly doing it.
Yeah. Okay. Support people in PSH and permanent supportive housing. So effectively, considering we only have the crossings in the city of Charlottesville, that's the only location. So supporting those folks in particular.
There's been a lot of support through food distribution at the crossings. They don't really need rent support as far as I can tell. So I think that's done.
Okay. Begin search for properties for future affordable rentals. And in some ways, in my mind, I know that's in here, but that's also sort of a longer term arc as well. So the one thing maybe I will say on this as a pointed, a pointed, touch or whatever. So, before COVID, UVA set an audacious goal for creating 1,500 units of affordable housing over 10 years and partnership with agencies in the region. And while that is a fantastic goal, zero effort or zero progress has been made towards that goal, at least from the outside perspective. And I know that the university has been consumed by their own internal planning process, planning for their core function, which is education, but we can't lose the time to keep that moving. So I will say that continues to be for me, a high priority, and I continue to push on that.
And I will say that I do think that the part of it that is begin the search for the properties from UVA's perspective, that has begun. It's the next step of, okay, once you've identified the properties, how do you move toward actually building the units? I think that's where we're stuck. But I think the begin the search for properties has happened. It's just that now we're losing time activating that knowledge.
Fair enough. Implement a short-term landlord rental assistance program.
Sorry, Sunshine, this is Chris real quick. Meyer from LEAP. Just want to say that LEAP and Charlottesville Redevelopment Housing Authority are implementing our energy efficiency and rental incentive program. So we are actively looking for new landlords. We haven't necessarily been publicizing it. We're working through kind of getting those first couple on board, but we are, again, trying to engage existing landlords to bring them more into CRHA's SysRap and get them I don't know all the acronyms, sorry, but Kathleen can tell you, but get them into the system so we can get more renters into their programs. Thanks.
Duly noted, Chris. Thank you. Back to implement a short-term landlord rental assistance program.
I mean, that's on tap right now.
Right. I mean, I think when we were working on this, Sunshine, we were thinking about one program that would go to, I guess, more support renters, and then also another program that would support landlords, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
They're connected.
Right. So I don't know why we said landlord rental assistance program, but
right.
I would say that's what John's proposing.
Fair enough.
And the state program.
And then additionally, the support that both CRHA and Piedmont Housing have also gotten from CACF are part of that as well. Implement a short-term emergency rent relief eviction prevention program and prioritizing unsubsidized renters. So what that means in particular is prioritizing those residents who don't have the advocates of CRHA or Piedmont Housing. And I think that's also what we're talking about rolling out here through the state funds and the city funds.
Yeah, I think so. Although I do think it's worth mentioning that because the state program is federally originated, it can't be used to pay, as I understand it, people who are in subsidized housing. Christine, if you remembered differently about that. So I think that prioritize is an important function for us to think about. And I think this program will necessitate that. So.
Thank you. Christine, did you want to jump in on that, or?
I can certainly comment, yeah, but there definitely are requirements for no duplication of assistance, and it goes into detail on what counts as duplication, and that does include housing choice vouchers, the HOPWA, the home tenant-based rental assistance. So there's a whole criteria of who is eligible and who is not, so that there is not duplication.
And I'll just say, thank you for that, Christine. I'll just say too that Elaine put in a good question in the chat too about one way to think about coordinating rent relief programs is through the requirements on them. And so because the state program like has to prioritize unsubsidized renters, that might be something to look at for other, like John's program, for instance, if it doesn't have that requirement, and there are people who are in subsidized units that need help with rent, maybe that could be a way to try to draw some distinction between those programs.
Thank you. And Christine, just as a heads up, per my email that I'd sent to you to get you on this call, we will circle back to you to kind of talk about the state funds, but I'm going to try to keep going through this first and then we'll come back to that.
Okay.
Actually, on that note, Christine, do you have a timeline, like by when you have to hop off the call to make sure we leave enough time for that?
Just the Regional Housing Partnership meeting at 2.
Okay.
So I'm in good shape.
Thank you.
Of course.
I'm going to shift to low-income home owners and home buyers. Increase outreach to vulnerable homeowners and soon-to-be homeowners through existing nonprofit channels. I think that's underway. Implement a short-term homeowners or mortgage assistance program. That's what we were talking about prior to this conversation. So I think that's also underway. Provide emergency financial coaching to help stabilize homeowners' finances. That's for us anyway, that's part and parcel of mortgage assistance programs. It includes that kind of financial counseling. I think that's true for Habitat and their efforts as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And we refer people to financial coaching when they come to us for rental assistance. So yes, for us too.
Okay. Complete and expedite almost finished subsidized home ownership homes.
Well, I mean, Habitat's is in the middle of polishing off a couple as we speak.
So in process, let's just say that.
In process.
Complete ongoing and scheduled emergency repairs, prioritizing vulnerable, elderly, and disabled households. And I think this relates to the work that AHIP does predominantly. Jen's not on the call.
Corey is, however.
Oh, Corey, you're right. You're on the call.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? I'm
Sure.
cutting in and out.
Yep. Complete ongoing and scheduled emergency repairs, prioritizing vulnerable households.
Yeah, so we had a brief shutdown in April when the peak of the pandemic was projected. We've since continued operations as usual, prioritizing houses with the most needs. So we're definitely have that as an ongoing effort.
Thank you.
Sunshine, this is Chris from LEAP. Yeah, we're back as of 6 weeks ago, pretty much, and have communicated with social services to try to prioritize households who are especially vulnerable for heat-related issues, so that we can get them their cooling they need, so they can potentially avoid getting into other cooling centers, etc.
Great, thank you. Other key activities: distribute masks to those who need them. I know that the city distributed a number of many thousands of masks to various entities. I don't know if that was a sufficient quantity or not, but.
Yeah, I'll just say in the homeless system side, we can say that that's been done and is ongoing, but in that sector.
We've done 2 different distributions, one where we got them from the EOC, and then a second one where we had an anonymous donor through the running shop. And we'll probably be doing a 3rd one in about a month.
So I think what I'm hearing is that it's an ongoing activity, but so far has been done reasonably well. Utilize existing relationships through nonprofits to distribute relief, food, funding, school supplies, etc. I think that's been going as well as it could be. There's lots of coordination on the food side. There's been the emergency assistance funds, etc.
Yeah, in the community, like community meals, Salvation Army and the Haven have taken that on. A lot of churches didn't feel comfortable using their spaces, but are still supporting it. So in terms of like the free meals in the community, that's still definitely being supported.
collect data for planning. And I believe what this is referring to is that where things are being distributed, where resources are being deployed, knowing where those are happening allows us to plan better for the future. I can speak for ourselves. We collect some rudimentary data along those lines, but it has not been, comprehensive, I would say, as much as I perhaps would like it to be. And I know it's not plugged into a larger sort of whole. I don't know where others are at. I mean, I do know, if I remember correctly, CACF was collecting data as well as a way to kind of provide some daylight on patterns, but I've not seen any of the results of that data collection.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, there was a lot of information that was gathered from the COVID relief project that CACF was a part of, as well as the city and United Way. But, I don't think there's been the time to kind of digest it.
So perhaps one recommendation here, is to request some parsing of that data at the very least, so we can and see if there are patterns that are helpful as we plan for the future.
And just a note, we got an intern through Hack-Seville to look through to analyze our data for direct support over the last year to see where needs were required, food or rental. So we'll have data on our 910 job seekers that we can feed into this overall system of planning.
And Jeanette Kawachi has shared two things: that Habitat has distributed 5,000 masks, and that Habitat recently administered a COVID-19 survey for home buyers, homeowners, and applicants, and they have 100 responses so far. So, I do think there is probably some value in identifying a central entity to kind of collect these various sources of data and see how they come together. I don't know if that's a city role. I'm not sure, but I suspect we need to red flag that. I'm going to keep going in the interest of time. Engage people with lived expertise in the planning. Julia, you're muted. Maybe that's on purpose. I don't know.
I was just saying that I don't think that has happened.
Yeah. I think you're right. It's minimal. Document and assess impact of COVID-19 on disproportionately impacted communities, especially communities of color. That might fall back to the question of the data we have collected and doing that evaluation. Okay, I'm going to switch over to, so that was all theoretically under the 0 to 3 months. If we had a report card based on my just reading through those, it seems like we got like maybe a C, in the 70 to 80%, which is honestly, that's better than I thought maybe. So that's a good thing. But there's improvement to be had for sure. All right, I'm going to shift over to short-term actions, which again, theoretically, I think we're sort of in the middle of this time frame relative to when COVID began. I'm going to start again with unhoused people. Sustain and expand efforts to support, screen, test, and shelter unsheltered people.
Yes, done. Underway.
Right. Engage people with lived expertise to increase outreach, especially in rural areas.
Yeah.
Not been done for unhoused folks, no. The rural counties is really a big, we have not been focusing, just being transparent, we have not focused a lot of resources in rural counties. We've been pretty consumed with the county and the city area.
That's a no. provide non-congregate sheltering, motels, etc., for unsheltered people.
Yep. Currently doing.
Purchase hotel or other existing facility to keep people housed and increase overall system capacity.
Working on it, but not done.
Underway, yep. Extend short-term homeless rental assistance program as needed.
I mean, so yeah, I mean, I think this relates to the kind of emergency rental assistance program, but you know, the ones being proposed by both John and then that hopefully come through the state are of longer term, and they're gonna be at least, you know, up to 12 or 6 to 24 months. So they would be in that extended zone. So I think that that's underway or done.
Okay. Begin aggressive landlord engagement activities to increase supply of affordable rentals.
Yeah, this is an important one. We have not been able to engage in that. And honestly, we need partners. I mean, I think we all need to do this. I think this is one that extends beyond just the unhoused population. But, you know, in particular for us, is so we need a lot of new units available because we have people who need to move into their own units, but we're not alone in that. There's a lot of people who are doubled up who need to move into their own units as well. So, but it's certainly something that we, you know, TJAC, I can't do on my own, but it's not something that we have done a huge focus on. We do have a housing navigator who has worked with us, who started in February, but basically started right when COVID hit and has really been working from home this whole time. So, you know, he's been doing his best and doing out landlord engagement. So it's underway, but it's not been bearing the fruits that we needed to, or it's not the scale that we needed to be at, if that makes sense.
I think this is something that is going to be long-term, and it's going to take everyone, city, county, doing this together, because it's not, again, I just don't see one agency doing this, right? Because you have people coming through different facets of program where homelessness is a problem.
Yeah, I think you're right, Joy. And I think the other piece to it too is that what we've learned, and I know we need to move on, but what we've learned so far relatively quickly is that, you know, just engaging with landlords isn't enough to bring new units online. We need something else. And so, you know, we're hoping that this risk mitigation program would encourage landlords to reduce some of the barriers that we're seeing, because even in COVID, like we don't see a lot of landlords that are really looking like needing people to move in yet. We just haven't seen that yet. And so we haven't seen landlords really lower their barriers in a meaningful way to help get our folks into housing. And I think Joy's right, it needs to be a coordinated effort. And I know Lisa commented something. So anyways.
The two things I would add on to that are, one, maybe one of the action items in here should be the prioritization of getting I know it changed its name, but the Landlord Risk Mitigation Program passed and funded and up and running. That should be one of the priorities for city to push through as quickly as possible. And then secondarily, ideally this line item would be being addressed by the Housing Hub if the Housing Hub were in existence. But yeah, we've been stymied on that front too. I'm going to keep moving, recognizing that there's more to get through. Invest in Housing Hub and housing navigation supports to assist people who lose their housing. So I don't quite know what to do with that, because that requires investment. It's like, as Joy was mentioning, it requires a collaborative approach with a sort of centralized connection point. And we have, as of yet, been unable to identify a funding source to facilitate that. So finding funding for that might be, one of the priorities.
And I mean, Lisa has chimed in again, a volunteering car to be a part of that process, which I think is great. So I don't know if there's anything in particular we can put on their plate, but I do think that the program needs, you know, the landlord risk mitigation program and needs to get through. And investment needs to be made into something more centralized, like you said, Sunshine. So.
And just for purposes of when we get to these things where it's not clear or there's a path forward that needs to be taken, do we need to designate somebody to coordinate that or quarterback it so that it doesn't just say, oh, this is something we really need, but it's nobody's in charge of getting it done? Or how do you want to, because we're starting to run into a number of these, who's taking the lead on it, even just to coordinate the moving forward, and
Yeah,
doesn't
Ridge.
want to do during this meeting.
Yeah, Ridge, I was thinking sort of exactly on the same lines, and I think if we can sort of get through this section and then circle back and try to figure out who we task with what and what needs and what role the hack can play in coordinating some of these and what our next steps are and how to move forward on each of the ones that are sort of in that glaring spot. I think it's right.
Lyle, are your notes sufficient so that when we get through the short-term activities, you can quickly go back and identify those loose ends?
I've been highlighting.
Okay. So I'm going to keep moving with that in mind.
Thanks.
Engage people with lived experience to increase outreach. And this is a replication of the previous comment, but the one before was focused on unhoused people. This is focused on low-income renters. And I think you're right, Joy. I'm seeing a shaking head, and I think the answer is no, it hasn't been done. Maintain funding commitments for ongoing public housing redevelopment and other affordable housing development projects. So now I'm adding such as Friendship Court. I can't speak for public housing, but for Friendship Court, I think we've been able to maintain where we need to maintain, at least for now.
I would say we've been maintaining as well as had a few successes recently.
Okay. Call that done
Of course,
then.
we've sort of capitulated that CIP items or other sort of actual development items related to CAF funding for this next year are likely out the window, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I think that's a different line item.
Okay.
Purchase land and or properties for affordable rentals. I think that's a big fat no. Extend short-term landlord assistance rent relief program as needed. I think that's kind of what we're in the middle of right now. Increase financial coaching for impacted renters to avoid accumulation of debt and predatory lending, protecting their credit, etc. I know that Habitat has been taking a lot of it. I know that we have been taking a lot of it. I suspect the other financial counseling entities in the community have been taking a lot of that as well. We've certainly been doing lots of internal coaching with our own renters additionally. Is there more to be done or thought about here? Although maybe I'll follow up on that, just say that when we have the rollout of the state mortgage, renter assistance funds, that will include, I think, additional counseling in that regard as well. So, although I will point out that, and I don't quite know how this fits into this equation, but I had this conversation with DHCD on Monday when they were announcing the dollars coming to the COCs and so forth. The reality is that I'm going to use Piedmont Housing as an example, but I'm sure we're not unique. Our financial coaching team already has a full schedule and had a full schedule prior to COVID hitting. So as we are transitioning to additional financial coaching for impacted renters, if effectively we're displacing other folks from those same conversations because there's just a limited number of staff and staff hours to do that coaching. So I will say that there is likely need for an increase in overall city capacity for financial coaching, whether at Piedmont Housing or other organizations or collectively, to really address the need in a comprehensive way. Compiled database of local rental properties and landlords subject to the moratoria.
Moratoria is ending, but does that abrogate everything else in that line?
Nancy Carpenter said Seville DSA is establishing a court watch program for unlawful detainers to compile data for the LJ Legal Aid Justice Center. But I think there's probably not, and I don't know if Elaine is on or anyone else from Legal Aid who can comment on any sort of compilation of a database of local rental properties subject to the moratorium.
There wasn't a local one, but there was a federal resource for that.
That's true. Yep. So Nancy pointed out that the National Low Income Housing Coalition has a database for multifamily properties. Nancy, since you're listening, would you mind trying to search for that and post that link in the Q&A or the chat, just so that people have access to it? I'm going to keep moving while Nancy does that. Thank you, Nancy. Monitor court for eviction proceedings and provide legal services. I think that's also what Nancy was referring to in her first piece around Court Watch. So I'm going to say that's in progress. And now transitioning to low-income home buyers and homeowners, extend short-term homeowner mortgage assistance program as needed. I think that's what we're seeing with the state funds right now. This one, you can't see it there fully there, but increase financial coaching for impacted homeowner buyers to avoid debt accumulation, protect credit, navigate forbearance, etc. I know we are doing that now. But it goes back to the same point that there is a limited capacity collectively for the community for the amount of coaches available. And Jeanette posted, we have increased our financial coaching capacity. We recently opened up an emergency financial coaching to the general public from Habitat. So I would say that's underway, but probably has room to be funded further because I know there's a need still. Increase subsidies to complete and expedite in progress affordable home ownership and rehab emergency repair projects. So this is about dollars. And I think the answer is no.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, no, and our budget got cut for this upcoming financial year to do our energy efficiency stuff. So in the city, at least.
AHIP in the city as well. The CIP funding that we received was removed from the budget.
Purchase land and or other properties for affordable home ownership, monitor and preempt foreclosure sales to investors. Yeah, there's not much going on, I think, on that front. Okay, and I think there's real opportunity there. Offer tax relief and forbearance for low-income homeowners at risk of losing their homes due to delinquent taxes. I don't know if anyone in the city can respond to that. I don't know what that status looks like. I'm going to keep moving and we'll keep that as an open item. Increase down payment assistance to low-income home buyers. I will say that Piedmont Housing is looking at ways to make it easier to use our down payment assistance dollars. And we also applied for a new tranche of funding as a CDFI. But those are, the CDFI dollars are, if we get them, it will be early next year. It won't be, it's still a little ways out. Other key activities. Implement transparent, equity-based decision-making protocols. I would say that's a big no. We have not done that collectively. Partner with nonprofits to update estimates about real-time housing needs. There's no central entity kind of really evaluating that, I don't think. Use
That
data.
sounds like a housing hub thing. Sorry, Sunshine.
Yep, no, I agree with you. Using data to project need for varying interventions and inform equity-based decisions in the future. Nope. Engage people with lived experience in planning. Nope. Establish links to employment services using data to ensure employment and income outcomes are equitable.
So just for the record, we're reopening our virtual doors on July 6th. We've really had, been focused on our existing job seekers, but we're reopening because there are a lot of employers that are looking for workers again. And so we need to do a better job with our partners like Joy and the city through Holly to really coordinate our efforts. But I think we've got good infrastructure built to do this. We just have to do it better. With the aim, again, of our, trying to work on both sides of this ledger, reduce expenses for renters, but also boost income for renters. So maybe they're not low income renters anymore. They can keep moving up. That's the goal.
Thank you, Ridge. Continue development of housing strategy, the city housing strategy, and add COVID-19 addendum to the scope of the work.
That's definitely underway. I don't know about that addendum though.
Yeah, I think we highlight the addendum piece, but you're right. I think they're doing their best given the circumstances and inability to congregate people to get, face-to-face impact. I know that folks in our communities have had a few different phone calls and participated in surveys and so forth.
This is Chris Murray. Is there this may be a question for Carr. Is there any sort of early warning device that would let us know whether the private sector landlords are hurting? Because if they're being pushed by a banker who's not going to give them forbearance, or they have no other choice, then that's going to devolve to the renters. And is there any method? Is there any way to monitor that?
So I can speak a little bit to some of that, is that it breaks down into a couple of categories, right? So category A is sort of the large multifamily owners, landlords who are corporate or under formal management. And the answer is no, but the number of those persons and entities is relatively small, and I think we can get our heads around that. I mean, that's an afternoon of phone calls in one sense and emails. You're dealing with about 10 entities that covers a lot of the larger multifamily players. For the individual landlords, that gets a little stickier, but about somewhere around 75 to 80% of the sort of investment residential housing that's 4 units or less is going to fall into the category where forbearance is available to those landlords. So, and then the rest is those who are sort of really with conventional loans that are not Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. And a lot of those are sort of on the local community bank side. And those banks seem to be eager not to put foreclosures on their balance sheet.
Good.
From what I can tell. And maybe Lisa can speak to some more of that, but that's my impression.
I haven't heard any major drawbacks. Most all the banks are willing to work with everyone. From my understanding, there has not been an outcry to Carr to come and advocate for landlords in terms of them being foreclosed upon. In this environment, it seems like most banks are, like re-emphasizing what was just said, most banks are willing to put payments to the back of a loan or work with the individual in some kind of regards. They don't want to see foreclosures either. So there is a real cooperative effort out there to keep people in their homes and keep landlords maintaining their business status model.
That's good to know.
But I think, Chris, you do bring up a point, which is, and I think this is common wisdom out there, that the homeownership sector in general has been propped up by federal interventions over the last few months. And a lot of those interventions are shortly going to begin to end unless they get renewed. And so we are probably looking at the precipice of a potential crisis coming down the road, though, unless the federal government takes some additional action. And that's true in the rental side as well as homeownership side. That has to do with unemployment insurance, that has to do with mortgage forbearance requirements, it has to do with eviction moratoria, etc. So it's 1:15. We've been through both immediate and short-term actions. I think there are three paths ahead of us. One is I can continue, we go through medium and long-term. Two, we can circle back to the points that are kind of leftovers that no one took ownership of. And three, which is what I would sort of suggest, is that we circle back to Christine to ensure we get her input from TJPDC's perspective on the incoming state dollars to make sure we understand that before going back to the other immediate and short-term actions. Does that make sense to folks? Start with Christine.
Yeah, I think that makes sense that we should turn it to Christine for an update. And then I believe Lyle has already posted his note taking.
And so Christine, just as a quick primer for that, there is early discussion about, or questions about the administration of the state dollars coming in, and both on the mortgage assistance side and on the rental assistance side. Apparently, we have $500,000 coming in to TJAC in a few days. If it all arrives in the bank account on Monday, are we prepared to start deploying those funds on Tuesday? Or if not, what are the hurdles in front of us to finalize that?
Sure, we are working, as you can imagine, feverishly to get this money out quickly. DHCD's requirement is that it is able to be deposited by Monday. So we are drafting guidelines, we are creating grievance policies, setting up MOUs, identifying community partners. Right now, the TJPDC will serve as the administrator, which will then grant money to sub-grantee organizations that will work as the support staff to do intake and assessment and actually deploy those funds to renters, lenders, and rental companies. The funds do not go directly to households. Our goal is to be getting money out as quickly after that as we possibly can, but it'll take coordination with the community partners, the organizations that are going to be deploying those funds, because we are going to have to coordinate our intake and assessment process, coordinate the data collection to make sure we're getting good data. We're going to try to get as few organizations to serve in that role as possible so that it is as coordinated and we can communicate as well as we can, knowing that some organizations may not have the capacity to do their locality completely on their own. So that's what we're working on right now. We hope in the next 48 hours to pull together a meeting of sub-grantees to talk through exactly that. What is the capacity? Do you need another organization? Can you do it solely on your own for your locality? The funds will be distributed on a per capita basis to make sure that we are fairly doing set aside funding for our rural communities, but all 6 localities will receive funding. Currently, it is $450,000 that we should receive by Monday, knowing that there are likely additional tranches of funding coming once this tranche is expired, but all funding and all activities need to be completed by reporting by November 15th, activities completed by December 30th. So that's the time frame. What else can I tell you? I wasn't a part of your earlier conversation, so I don't know what else you guys want to know.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what I heard you describe right there was primarily focused on rental assistance, or was that overarching on mortgage assistance as well?
That is both. That is rental and mortgage assistance.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I also, as I understand it from the DHCD call, is that eligible expenses extend backwards to April 1,
Correct.
but nothing before that.
Correct. So the guidelines, you can use the RMRP funding, the Rent Mortgage Relief Program funding for April 1st and after. However, if you find that a renter, for example, has 6 months of rent in arrears, the RMRP program could cover 3 months of that, with the landlord excusing the other 3. But the funding from the state can only be applied from April 1st and after.
And I know that it's still a work in progress and this is all moving very rapidly, but if you, and this is maybe an uncomfortable question, but if you had to put a bullseye on a date when you think infrastructure will be in place to start distributing funds, can you give a ballpark?
I think it'll take us at least another week before we're cutting checks. So if we get money by the 29th, maybe by July 6th, we'd start being able to deploy those funds. Again, I'm just picking a date because I think there is still some work of getting, we're going to be potentially using the HMIS intake that COCs use, that TJAC uses. So that'll take training for our organizations that are going to be deploying these funds. So there's several steps that we're going to try to get in as quickly as people are available. But I don't think it's realistic to say that that money will be deployed the day it's received. I can almost say that with a lot of confidence. But
I would speak for myself in any case, and I think a week's time of gap between receiving funds and deploying them is fantastic. So I think that's great.
We're gonna do our best because we recognize that, you know, folks need this money quickly because of that moratorium, and that date is the 29th. And so we're trying to move as quick as we can.
Let me ask one other question that came up at some point along the way. And you pointed out that duplication of subsidy is not okay, meaning that if you are on a, let's say it's a Section 8 unit at Friendship Court where you have HUD subsidy, or you are on a housing choice voucher, that you cannot duplicate support for those individuals. And so I think that's clear. Where there, I want to make sure we are clear on another part of that, which is if you are in the CSRAP, that's not federal dollars. So even though it's a housing subsidy, it does not count as a duplication. Would you?
The HCD requires that it's any federal, state, or local subsidy for housing assistance.
Got it. So if you are on CSRAP, you're also not eligible.
As far as I understand, that based on the wording in their guidelines.
Okay.
That's also how they've run their other homeless relief programs as well. That they didn't allow us to assist people who had a CSRAP program.
Thanks for confirming that. The other sort of nuanced line is that there are communities, and I'll use one of ours as an example. If we say Timberlake Apartments, which had a LIHTC subsidy originally, but no operational subsidy is provided to those tenants, even though they are in a quote unquote low income affordable unit, they are not directly subsidized, so they are eligible.
Are their rents adjusted to their household income?
No. So if, for example, the rent is set on a prescribed income level, so let's say 50% AMI,
right?
But if their rent, if their income changes, the rent does not change.
Okay, there are specifications in there, and it actually gives the example of a LIHTC property that, I mean, I can read you the sentence if that helps you, so I'm not paraphrasing. It's 2 sentences. Some housing programs are structured to subsidize an entire rental project to assure that rents for some or all of the units remain within certain required affordable ranges. In these cases, rents are not adjusted to household income, and these types of programs include but are not limited to LIHTC and home program rental projects. households in these types of housing programs could potentially be eligible for assistance as long as they meet all other requirements.
Perfect. Thank you.
Of course.
I'll also add in real quick, because one of the questions Elaine typed in was about the lease requirements. And Christine, correct me if I'm wrong, but you actually don't need to have a formal lease to get rental assistance in this program, but you do need a statement from the landlord specifying the tenant and the duration of the agreement and the amount that the tenant is paying. So if you have the cooperation of the landlord to write this down, an informal lease can be accepted. So that's nice. One of the tricks is that we need a W-9 to pay the landlord. So that's just something to be aware of. That is a requirement.
Yeah, that's a non-negotiable per the federal guidelines. So we have to have a W-9 from any.
Yeah.
Are there any other key questions for clarification? Either in the chat or in the Q&A or from the folks who are directly participating in the call? Jeanette asks, how will this program be advertised?
The Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission will have a large marketing push to get it out regionally, and then we are going to rely on all of those other organizations to then push it out into their own networks. We have a very long ongoing list that we're going to make sure that we hit, and then we are going to also ask other people to push it out. So we're going to do the best we can at the PDC.
Any other questions?
I can also say anybody that is on this call, if you think of a question outside of this meeting time, feel free to email me directly, cjacobs@tjpdc.org, and I will do the best I can to answer your questions as we build the plane while flying it.
So collectively, I'll say on behalf of myself in any case, thank you for taking on the administration. It's obviously a very heavy lift, but a critical resource for the community. So thank you for putting in the time and the effort.
We are happy to do so.
Actually, Lisa Torres put a question. She's curious if there is data collected on the number of folks who are ineligible for this assistance because they're already receiving national, state, local subsidies. How many of them have lost their employment due to COVID and actually do need this help? I think that's an important question. I think it's actually a fairly straightforward calculation because it really encompasses folks in Section 8 properties with project-based Section 8, folks with under the CSRAP, folks with individual vouchers, and folks in public housing. I believe that's the comprehensive list. I will say that there's no doubt that there is clearly additional need. There are lots of folks struggling. At least some of those folks at Friendship Court and Section 8 community and folks in public housing have received some interim private assistance through the Community Foundation. But it did not cover CSRAP folks, and it did not cover the housing choice voucher folks on the list. It's from CRHA. So it will be an ongoing need. But I don't know that we've not collected our data. Collaborated on collecting our data, how many of them have lost their employment during COVID. I will say just anecdotally, just to use Friendship Court as an example, with 150 families, over the last 2 months, we have done what's called income recertifications for over half of those households. And what that means is their income has changed in a period of time. And almost certainly the vast majority of those are due to COVID related losses of income. And I suspect Friendship Court is not unique in that regard. I suspect it's a common thread. So it's 1:30. Do we want to circle back now to Lyle's list of items that do not have an entity or next step associated with them yet?
Before we move on, can I ask my question I had put in the chat? Is are we making efforts, or are there any additional efforts made to reach vulnerable individuals who may benefit from some of this funding that are not associated through social service or a nonprofit? Are there any other means that we're reaching out to individuals?
I think that's a resounding no.
No. Yes, that was a deafening
You
silence.
don't have to, because from my understanding, some of this funding that is available, there are not able, people who currently get subsidized housing will not be able to benefit from almost double dipping in a lot of this, but there is some funding that are for individuals who are not getting any subsidized help. But there's no other, it seems like there is a need to have another channel to communicate to those individuals. This is a very specific group in this chat, which consists of a lot of nonprofits. But what about those who are not tied to that? How are we able to reach those vulnerable individuals as well? I just want to put that out, not saying that we have the answer, but I think that should also reside in the back of our minds as we try to plan and lead this group.
I don't know the timelines, but something the city's had good luck with is putting things in the utility bills. People do read them.
I guess, sorry, maybe somebody already mentioned this, but there's going to be a press release about this somewhere, right?
Christine, can you rephrase or recap your outreach plan?
Yes, I will assume that we will do a press release. Yes, because we will want to get this out to the general public.
So we should expect the newspaper and TV stations to pick this up also, and it would be framed as not just the existing people receiving this type of assistance, but this new opportunities for people too.
Yes.
Cool.
Okay. How many, Lyle, I don't know if you can quickly go over, I don't know how many items there were that felt like they were loose hanging.
Well, a lot of these are somewhat duplicative. The main one that came up over and over was engagement and sort of like more planning, really involving people, which we are talking about that as part of CVille plans, but that's super long term. For now, I don't think anybody owns this.
And Lyle, you're referring specifically to engaging people with lived expertise?
Yes, including low-income renters, homeowners. I think that's even
unhoused folks
homeless
as well.
too. Yeah.
Yep.
So, Lyle, does it make sense to sort of run through your notes and collectively sort of highlight out the sort of unowned pieces of this right now, and then the uncoordinated pieces, and see where we are from there?
Yes.
Okay. Are you the person to Sherpa us through your own note taking?
I've done that thing. So the first one is engaging people. Just no one owns that. It sounds like we don't have a solution for that right now, though. Is that true? Hearing none, moving to the next one. Requesting data from CACF. Hack CVille was looking at it. Just someone needs to do that. Relatively achievable.
I mean, I'm happy to feed our information up into a coordinated system. I think that's the challenge, is we each are collecting our own data, but there's no central template or repository for that information. And so I think I don't know whether this is after the call, but I think those of us who collect data need to come together to figure out how do we how do we coordinate the analysis of all that data?
That's exactly right, Rich. We need to figure out, I mean, you sort of put it exactly on point. You're willing to feed it up to something. What's the something? And how do we get there?
Subcommittee meeting?
Well, it does seem like that is right up Hack-Seville's corridor, like, and they theoretically have capacity that none of the rest of us does.
So they do require payment. I mean, it's a paid internship through Hack-Seville, at least that's my understanding. And so I think we just need to, we can talk to Danny at Hack-Seville and see if this is something that they want to undertake, and then they can give us maybe some
begun
kind
the
of
process accepting Aetna insurance and have contacted you guys about that.
Yeah.
I can reach out to them if you want.
Yeah, Ridge, I think if you could drive on that and see what we need to do to take the next steps, that would be.
Darn it.
Gotcha.
You'll do a beautiful job. Thank you. Back to engagement. Investment. Someone has to pay for a housing hub or housing navigation, or at least someone needs to figure out who's going to pay or how's going to pay. Who's doing that? It's not me.
I mean, there have been multiple efforts over the last 1.5 to 2 years to try to find funding and momentum in that direction, and it's been, it hasn't worked. I don't quite know what to do with it, other than just to highlight that, you know, it's really sort of a funder question.
So maybe the next step is can we circulate the most current or robust proposal that those of us who see grants come across our desk or could say, oh, this would be a good fit for, but you know, I kind of lost track of how much and what it would do, and so I've kind of lost the thread on who might be a good grantor for such a thing. So could we circulate a proposal?
So I will say that, and I know this isn't an accurate title, but Farmer Todd has been continuing to try to run that process. And it has kind of pivoted a bit from where we had started with it, which is fine, but it is kind of in a different set of hands at this point. I think it would be useful to engage Todd to understand where that's at before kind of taking that step you're describing, Ridge, just to, and I'm happy to connect with Todd on that, unless Anthony, you're gonna say something.
No, I think I was gonna bring up the same thing, and that, you know, for whatever it's worth, I'll just say that I'm not sure I would put funding a housing navigation hub as a top priority right now, honestly, considering we just need to keep people largely in their homes for the most part, and there's a lot to be focused on around those issues. I think housing navigation is a really important thing we need to address long term, but we need to build housing, and we need to keep people in their housing. And in this particular situation, I don't know that I would prioritize that over other initiatives, but you know, there are many ways to address it without putting a lot of money into it as well. And I think Todd has done a great job of that. So I'm not saying stop doing it, but
yeah, I think for this conversation, our discussion about the housing hub has been pointing to something that does counseling, outreach, and coordination, all of which are things we need, but we don't really have the means to put together that housing hub now. So we've got to, again, to bring this up for the fourth time, where I guess we just build the plane while it's flying, and we try to pull an ad hoc method together.
I say we put in a proposal like Ridge suggested, and we move forward from that, and we can all have a vote on it.
Right.
I don't think that it should be automatically dismissed. Put forth the proposal, and we can move forward from there and refresh people's memory about it.
the wisdom I see in Anthony's comment is not, I agree with you, Lisa, we don't want to lose it, but I can see the value in putting it in, say, the medium-term actions rather than short-term. Recognizing we can't do everything at the same time, and that there are some things that are consuming our focus for now. So I don't know if folks are amenable to that, but we could shift that over to medium-term. So we don't lose it, Lisa, but at least we give it a little bit more time to focus on other current things.
Well, that's why you put forth a proposal and you have full input on it, and people can decide as a group.
I agree with Lisa that we have to, the housing hub has to play an essential role here. You have so many different nonprofits doing what they're doing with their own little hub, that we need a much more broader, that brings it all together and that cover each piece of it. So I think not that, I'm not saying we don't have a more important thing with, the moratorium going away, the fact that everybody hasn't gotten their jobs back yet. I think we're going to even find that there are more emergency stuff coming up on our table going forward. But I do think we can't lose the idea of having a housing hub where everything is going through one challenge. So I support Lisa on what she's saying.
And yeah, the proposal I would be happy to share that I worked on with different partners, which was, a year and a half ago now. It's crazy to think about. But I think it has been updated. So Ridge, if you are reaching out to Todd on that, I believe he might have updated that proposal.
Sunshine.
I'm also.
Yeah, I think it's worth circling back to Todd to kind of seeing and dovetailing that original proposal with whatever the on-ground work is going on right now. Anthony, do you mind kind of like on that note, kind of reaching out to Todd and
Sure.
Connecting those two?
Yep, no problem.
And then Elaine commented that, the state funding that we're getting from DHCD allows for, a percentage to go to administration. She's asking whether or not some of that could be used for housing hub person, one way or the other. Christine's gone now, so I don't quite know what the.
Elaine, were you asking about the,
go ahead.
Sorry, that was the rent mortgage relief program,
Right.
admin support or whatever? Yeah. Theoretically, it could, yes. 5% is admin and 10% can be used towards staffing to administer the program. So it would be, the current model is that it's going to be spread among a couple different entities. And so, it's not a ton available for that, but if it were centralized, it certainly could act as that. But I just doubt that's going to be realistic with the time frame that we need to get this program out. But Christine should, I can't speak for them, but that would be my assessment.
So perhaps Anthony, not to pile too much on you, but in talking with Todd and talking with Christine, just kind of floating that idea, just to see, what the next step might be and bringing something back around the housing hub back to this body in a month's time.
Sure. One thing that we certainly, I think, could be achievable is that we are certainly going to learn about a lot of rentals in the community. And that information, which is referenced in other parts of this, is that we should be collecting that information and storing that and building out this landlord database. And so I think that at the very least is something that we should definitely focus on. I think can be achieved through this rent and mortgage relief program. Is we're going to know about a lot of places in the community that people live and what those go for, which would be helpful. So.
Okay, so next one, and this is a big one, funding for new projects and to finish projects. I don't know that we have hope on this one.
Yeah, I think that really, for what it is, at least the purpose of our discussion here, that really does get punted down to medium and long term. At present, the local funds have been allocated. We've got inbound, still crisis funds type stuff, and there does not seem to be, all of that stuff has been deferred at this point, and that's just a reality where we are. We've lost a year, essentially.
Tax relief action from the city. John, are you still on?
Yes, I'm still here. I think Phil expressed where we are. We're still looking for opportunities, and I would love to say, hey, we can use some of the state money to offset some of the costs that we might incur. But like others have said, our need is probably beyond the state money and the CAF money. So I don't know if that's realistic, but it's good to be looking for those opportunities. But like I said, I don't know if it's realistic.
John, can you summarize where we are on sort of tax relief and tax collection? We've bumped back the real estate taxes to now for the first half, and then enforcement. I understand that we're soft pedaling enforcement. Is that about where we are with the real estate tax collection, et cetera?
I cannot answer that. Alex is on here. Alex might know, or Brenda. Either one of them may know, but I know I can't answer that question for you. Alex, you know?
In terms of real estate, we don't have that information. Only a tax office. But if you guys need the information, you can email John, and we can coordinate that and then send the information back out to you guys.
But my impression is there isn't a deferral of taxes beyond just paying them towards the end of June instead of the beginning of June, and that's about where we were. So.
And last up was just the Seaville plans, getting a COVID section added in there. Actually, I can do that.
Lyle, would you also take on the previous one, which is to email John and just get that going? I saw you.
I will gladly email John.
So, so on this list of things, I mean, when I was going through this pile, there were matters of coordination of data, which I think we've covered. There seemed to be a series of things that require sort of a second look dive and coordination on where UVA, for example, and their coordinated response, the Landlord Risk Reduction Fund, getting that passed and closed. Where are we really on eviction mitigation, et cetera? And I would say, is there sort of a series of next steps we ought to look at in the next, say, 3 weeks in terms of meeting, coordinating, polishing up, splitting off into subgroups? I'm sort of leaving this open on how to attack these issues and how do we organize them and what's our role? And we have 12 minutes to resolve all that.
So the Landlord Risk Reduction Fund is actually funded. It's already been approved by council. So the next step on that would be to put out an RFP or RFQ for organizations to operate and administer that program. I believe previously there was discussion about putting that program with the hub, the housing hub. But I don't know where we are on the housing hub. So I don't know if that's still some wishes out there, is to put them two together.
Well, I think we're from what I can tell in terms of getting funding for a housing hub, we are exactly nowhere. So we might just have to launch this thing as an independent.
And I just want to reiterate that Piedmont Housing is willing to participate in supporting that, just because we're on the mortgage assistance side, because that's what we're going to be doing ideally for the county as well.
Gotcha.
Here's my recommendation, or at least an idea for recommendation, is that I think there's a next step with the document that you're all seeing here, which is basically taking the notes that Lyle took and reorganizing this a little bit to identify those things that are complete, ongoing, or have question marks and next steps. And I also think that there is room for updates on some key pieces that are ongoing. And I think there is value, this is my 2 cents, I think there is value in us collectively getting back together to update each other on what's going on. And I would say the frequency is probably every 2 weeks. Like, I think there's enough moving rapidly that I think there's value in this exercise on a regular basis. It will, and you know, and we can, anyway, I think there's value in that. And coming back with an update and an updated spreadsheet and a series of next steps, I think would be helpful for that 2-week meeting.
So I would suggest, Sunshine, that maybe the way to organize that within the hack is to hand that to the community/outreach subcommittee and sort of set a meeting roughly 2 weeks hence, and then have that document updated, buffed, circulated, and sort of represented for that.
Do folks agree that every, at least for the short term, every 2 weeks or so is the right time frame?
I think that would be helpful. Yes, I think so much is changing. Agreed.
Okay.
Yep,
Yeah, I think.
agree.
All right. So let me just sort of put that to a general consensus. I don't know if it's a motion or vote, but is there a general consensus that we should sort of look at a 2-week return to all of this? Everyone sort of indicates somehow. Lyle, you only get 1 vote despite having 2 people in the frame.
Don't move.
Hello.
Yeah,
Movement, taking a formal vote, a formal
I'm
proposal.
just trying to get a sense of the consensus on it. I didn't want to formalize it but we can, if we can just sort of
Joy move.
Yeah.
Right,
Second.
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Call the roll.
0319. Talk to Lisa.
Anybody opposed?
0190.
Alex,
Alex and something.
mute up. There we go. Okay.
So I will work, I don't know if I'm the chair or not, or Jen is or whatever, but of the Outreach Communications Committee, but I will work to get something scheduled for 2 weeks from now. I will connect with Lyle to try to update this spreadsheet effectively. And I think we want to ensure that, say, for example, Christine can report back on the status of the state fund distribution at that point. We can go over some key things here, but there may be some particular report outs that it's useful to have. Aside from Christine reporting back out about the state funds, are there any other key report outs we want to ensure are there?
I'll be reporting about the housing hub stuff with Todd, the proposal. I think I'd like to be able to get, I know people asked for that, so.
Thank you.
And I'll
Then on the
report
data coordinate.
section.
Sorry, I was just going to say on the data coordination side, and Ridge was going to see on that.
Okay.
And if we could, I don't know what the mechanical way of updating the spreadsheet is, but I would like to add, economic mobility as both a medium-term and long-term action. Right now, it's just in short-term. But we need to be focused on can we move people up the income scale while we're trying to address the housing affordability challenge.
Amen, Ridge.
Thank you, Ridge. And I think maybe one of the priorities when we meet in 2 weeks is also to go over these medium and long-term actions to evaluate where we're at with these two.
Yeah, and I think in preparation of this meeting, if we can work to get the documentation out a little ahead of time in some sort of exchange format where we can get some whole hack input to download towards Sunshine ahead of that.
Yeah, and I will say that, this document right now lives on the web and is an editable document. The formatting, as I know, is a little clunky to some extent. But if you have specific items that you think, as we're going through this, that you think are missing, you can either email myself or Lyle, and we'll work on making sure those get integrated and reviewed in the next 2 weeks.
Great, thank you.
Because it's not comprehensive. This was a burst of effort in a short period of time, but there is no doubt some missing items in any of these categories: immediate, short, medium, whatever, all those.
So did I understand that Lyle was going to try to data dump his notes back into that sheet?
Well, Lyle and I are going to work together on that.
Yes.
Okay, got it. All right, good. So there's that. I think we've sort of covered that. If there's any more on this at this point.
Can I actually, Chris brings up a good point, which is, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. Recognizing we're going to aim for 2 weeks out, and I know lots of people's schedules, including mine, are pretty insane. I wonder if we can at least attempt a calendar check right now, just to see what we can find a time that works for most people. I'll just make a suggestion for a time. So 2 weeks from now will be the week of July 6th. Does this same time on Wednesday the 8th work for most people? Let me say it a different way. Is there anyone it doesn't work for?
Sold.
All right.
Me.
So, Brian, I'll need to work with you on getting that scheduled.
All right.
Did we miss? I know there have been lots of other additional comments in Q&A and chat. I'm not sure if we got to everything. I also know I need to sign off personally. I have another call.
I think we did.
Let me just say this. If there's anything that we did not get to that relates to the update of that document in preparation for the meeting 2 weeks from now, please reach out to me individually. And John Sales, I saw your private text to me. Just send me we'll confer afterwards. Send me a separate email and we can talk about that.
All right. Since we are approaching 2 o'clock, I am going to say that I'm going to give a 15-second update on the policy subcommittee, which is that the zoning text amendment and such was workshopped in a policy subcommittee meeting. We were working on part 2 of that when the current kerfuffle broadened. So the policy subcommittee has in its possession a side-by-side sort of discussion of where the subcommittee thinks it sits and where the actual policy, where the proposal sits. And we are going to look at a second review of that to have something ready before the Planning Commission's clock starts running on that again, so that we can circle back on that. And there will be more on that soon, probably a subcommittee meeting in the next couple of weeks, not to conflict with this one. In the remaining 2 minutes, public comment. I see nothing. Any other matters we need to discuss?
Move to adjourn.
Seconded. Okay.
Any discussion of that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. You can't stay on this meeting and you're all already at home. Thank you very much.
Thanks.